session today is about sharing information. And so what exactly does that mean? Well, I am going to be talking about 4 different things within EPICS. They're all different ways that you can share information. Specifically, they're about how you can share information from EPICS with other people outside of EPICS. So the 4 things I'm going to be talking about today are the email features within EPICS for creating and sending emails, the EDI features within EPICS for setting up information for electronic data interchange, the EPICS e-response, both which is a feature that we've had in the past that we have a newer version that is a couple years old now that is more flexible, and EPICS Web, which we've talked about in years past, but this year I am happy to show off a brand new version of EPICS Web, which has been rebuilt from the ground up. So first off, the email features. So inside EPICS, if you go to the Maintain Customer screen, there's a tab that's called Email Documents. And if you go there, you'll notice immediately that you've got this big wall of settings that you can set. I'm going to walk you through them. It's simpler than it looks, because if you look at this, you'll see that it's split into different sections. There is emailing acknowledgements, manifests, invoices, and quotes. And each of these has basically the same options. Just for each document, you can set it separately, and you can set it separately for each customer. So the first field here is, let me see if I can zoom, pointer options. Nope, zooming is not an option. Alas, okay. So the first field here is the email address, which is just who will get these documents when EPICS tries to email them. The next is you can choose a custom report file. If you have a different acknowledgement report for some of your customers than you do for your default, or if you have a different one for each customer, you can set that here. And then the next field is this export format. You can see we've zoomed in here on your options. And by default, it generates as a PDF. But if you would rather have a rich text formatted .rtf file, a comma separated text file, which can be also opened in Excel, but can be opened in either a just normal text reader or in a spreadsheet editor, or you can output it directly as an Excel spreadsheet, a .xls file. And so you have all of those options available to you depending on what you want to be able to do with these documents once they're emailed. The other option you have is to combine them, which is if you are sending, let's say that you have 5 acknowledgements for the same customer, you can either have it set to send 1 email per document. So you would have 1 email per document. So you would have 5 acknowledgements, you would have 5 emails. But if you find that this is causing spam email, and especially because a lot of email filters will see if they see a bunch of emails from the same source with the same subject line, and these emails will look very similar, of course, because they're all acknowledgements from you, it's possible that will trip their email filter and it'll all get sent to spam. So for both of those reasons, both to prevent them having to flip through a bunch of emails and to prevent it being categorized as spam, we have this second option, which is to combine the documents into 1 email. So if you have 5 acknowledgements that get sent at the same time, you get 1 email, and that email will have all 5 of the reports attached. There's also this use default setting that is based on a config setting. And here you can see there's a bunch of configuration settings associated with emailing documents. I'm not going to go into them in detail, but the important thing is these are different for each of the document types has its own settings. So you can see here we've got like GAC email body text file. There's a GManif email body text file, which is for manifests. And there's a G-invoice email text body text file, and so on. And these will let you further customize what you want your emails to look like. And here you can see the email combined by cust, which is telling you, which is the default setting of whether or not to combine multiple documents into a single email or just send a separate email for each document. The other thing I want to talk about in EPICS with emailing is that you have the option to Email Active Window, which is a button that is on the Help tab of the ribbon that when you click it, it will take a screenshot of your current screen and it will save the screenshot as an image, and then it will open your email client and attach the screenshot so that you can easily set up to send emails with whatever you're looking at to somebody with just one button press, which figure is helpful if you do not want to have to manually take a screenshot, open Paint, paste it into Paint, you know, crop the image, etc. Much easier, just press that button and it'll take care of things. So that is email features. Going to go ahead and pause here briefly in case we have any questions about the email features, since I'm going through several different things and they are all fairly complicated. Somebody asked, can we export reports directly to Compose email? You can. I don't think there's a button to directly. There is the ability to email reports, but I do not believe we have a button from the reports screen that will let you automatically do that.
It's not automatic, but when you're viewing a report, you can export that report to email.
Okay. So that's on the Crystal viewer that comes up.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I don't know if that's, I'm not sure that's what they're asking, but yes.
But yeah, so there's not a button within, there's a button in EPICS. It's on the Crystal viewer that comes up once you have generated a report.
Right.
So moving on to the next topic, which is e-response. So e-response is a way to let you allows your customers to request reports via email. So the reports are created when the email is sent using the information as it is when that email is sent. It's not, you don't have a bunch of reports being, you know, generated and just sitting around waiting to be called. It is generating the report and creating the PDF and then sending it back when it is requested. And you can control not only which reports are generated by each customer, you also control what information is in each report. You choose which reports in all are used by the system. And so you have pretty good control over what information you want your customers to be able to get and which customers will be able to get it. You can choose, for example, that you have some customers that you want to be able to see details on where in the plant, where in the process each item in their order is. There may be others that you only want to be able to see a list of their current orders or a list of their order history or such. So the way that you set up e-response is that e-response is a service that will run on your server. It is separate from EPICS. You download the installation package from the FOI website on the V9 downloads page. And I believe it is at the bottom under EPICS services. You download the e-response file, which is a .zip, which contains instructions on configuring e-response. And hopefully those instructions should give you all the knowledge you need in order to set up e-response. I'm not going to go through the steps here, especially since a lot of them involve specifics with your email server, because e-response is sending emails. You have to get the settings of your email server. But if you encounter any issues with that, we are happy to provide support and we can help you with any setup issues that you encounter. So that's e-response. It is, so I didn't actually mention the way that e-response works once it is set up is that once you have all of this configured, your customers will send an email to, for example, reports@foiinc.com and their order status, the keyword might be order status. So they send an email to reports@foiinc.com with the subject order status. And then once that email arrives, e-response will check the email, see that it's from that customer, check to make sure that they have permissions to run that report, then run the report and send an email back that has that report attached with whatever information is in the report. So the next thing we'll talk about is EPICS and EDI. So actually, first, suppose, are there any questions about e-response? Does not look like there are any. So moving on to EDI. So EDI stands for Electronic Data Interchange. It is a standardized way of constructing business documents. And EPICS doesn't directly generate EDI documents, but we can generate the underlying data necessary. So once you have the EPICS EDI service set up, it will automatically export the data, which you then will work with a third-party EDI provider to turn that data into the actual EDI documents. And the EDI service will let you choose what information you want. So you can choose any columns, you can rename them as needed, so that whatever data is necessary for those EDI documents, EPICS will package all that up and put it into a file, and then you send that to your EDI provider. So I'm now going to pull up EPICS and walk you through the steps of configuring EDI within EPICS, because it is just complicated enough that it seemed tricky to do it via screenshots. So let me attempt to press buttons to do that, and hopefully it will not break anything. Share screen, EPICS, share. All right. So the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go to this setting, GEDI enabled. You'll need to make sure to set to yes. Unless this is set to yes, you won't see any of the other tabs that I'm going to show you here. And you won't be able to work with the EDI service. So once that is enabled, you will then be able to pull up on, sorry, that's not the button I meant to press. Trying to find one of these. The invoices screen will work. I can remember where buttons are. Invoices. Okay, so you can see now that that is enabled, there's this EDI tab, and the EDI tab has a box, and this will look similar on all four of the screens that have EDI information, which is that for each thing you can see the last export date, the whether or not it is in the queue to have its data exported, and then this button that will let you manually add it to the export queue. I don't currently have the EDI service running on this database, so it won't generate this document, but you would just, by default, it will add to a document to the queue when it is created, assuming that you have EDI turned on. And then if you need to go back and regenerate it, that's what this button is for. And of course, if you do not want people to be regenerating documents, you can disable that by using this setting, GEDI enable manual export. So if this is set to no, and I close and reopen this screen, then you'll see that that button is no longer there. You no longer have the ability to manually set the document to be downloaded. The other settings are for setting up the view, so GEDI ACK view is the view in the database that is used to pull data for the EDI for acknowledgements, and there's a similar one for the other document types. There's nothing set here by default. If this isn't set, it will not generate EDI documents for acknowledgements, and the same for the others. So you are only generating EDI documents for document types that you have configured. Likewise, if you choose to rename the SO num column, which the acknowledgements need to have in order to export properly, if you've renamed that column, you can set here what the new column name is, so that the program will still run the SQL commands properly. And then we have the folder, the GEDI ACK folder, which is the folder that it will be exporting the data to. And then once it is in that folder, then you would send that to your EDI provider. There are also the options to change it from, by default, the files are comma delimit. delineated, but they can also be tab delineated if that works better for you. By default, they do not have a header, but if you want your CSV files to have a header that includes all the column names, you can set that. You can set if you want to export to a .txt or a .xml file instead of a .csv file, you can choose to set that. So the TXT file is basically the same as the CSV file, is just a different extension. The XML file is formatted differently because XML is just a different way of formatting files than CSV is. So TXT uses the CSV formatting. The export interval is how often in seconds it will export. The service will check to export new documents. By default, that is 600 seconds, which is 10 minutes. But if you need to have that update more frequently, you can. The big reason to have it be a longer interval is just to avoid the service taking too much time running the queries constantly. It shouldn't be a problem if you reduce the interval to a relatively short amount of time. Even a minute shouldn't be a big strain unless your server is very old or very slow. But we put it to 10 minutes because documents probably aren't being created that quickly. And it seemed like a good idea to err on the side of caution. And then we just have the same settings repeated again for invoices and manifests. So that is how you would set up EDI within EPICS. So the next thing on EDI that I wanted to talk about, the last thing was just how you set up the EDI service. Because similar to eResponse, the EDI service is a separate standalone program that runs on your server. It is not, it works with EPICS, but it is not directly a part of EPICS. And it runs constantly on the server and checks every so often. And the reason it's not part of EPICS is EPICS is potentially running on quite a few workstations, and the EDI service needs to only be in one place so that you're not generating the same documents multiple times, so that it's always running, so that you don't have to worry that if you only had one designated instance of EPICS that was generating documents and then that person closed EPICS, it wouldn't work. So this is a service that you download from the POI website. Like the eResponse, the download includes instructions for setting up the service. And if you encounter issues during setup or once the service is working, if something breaks, you can contact us and we'll help you get that resolved. So EPICS Web. This is a new version of EPICS Web. We've talked about it in years past. Had an experimental version of this that was kind of slow, kind of clunky, very difficult to set up on other people's machines. It required a lot of finagling with network resources, a lot of tinkering with the firewall. The new version doesn't have any of that. It is much easier to deploy. It requires much less maintenance on your end. It uses the WebSocket protocol, which means that basically instead of you setting up on your server to wait for a connection from the website, we have a central website and your server connects to it, so that instead of basically waiting open for anybody to send you a connection, which obviously has risks, which we had attempted to mitigate, and I believe we did successfully, but it was a security hole that is no longer present, because instead your server directly makes the connection to the central server and uses HTTPS once that connection is made to ensure that the connection remains secure. And then the central server is the only one that is connected to the website, and your server will only respond to specific commands from the central server that send back specific information, rather than being an open connection. There's no open SQL connection. There's no public visibility of your data. It is all handled through the central server that can only get certain information. So the EPICS Web will run in almost any browser. Sorry to anybody who was a huge fan of Internet Explorer, but we discovered that there were all sorts of just basic functions that worked on every single browser except for Internet Explorer. If you looked at the compatibility chart, it would show, Mozilla has been good for versions from 2012, Chrome been good for versions of 2012, Opera been good for versions of 2015. Internet Explorer, no compatibility, does not work. And after trying to find workarounds to the fourth or fifth key feature that this was the case for, just decided that Internet Explorer was going to be a no-go. I believe Microsoft Edge does still work. So if you do want to use Edge, that should work still. But the other thing about EPICS Web is it is more configurable than ever before. The old version had specific data that you would see, and that was it. If you wanted to see different columns, that was too bad. We could change it for everybody, but we could not change it for each person. And it wasn't possible for any person to any company on their own to change which data they wanted to have visible. And that is changed with this version. So what does it actually do? Well, there are two things that EPICS Web lets you do. The first is it works to show order status, and it will show that order status data in real time. You create a login for your customer. Your customer will log in and they will see their orders, and they can see details. They can drill down and see how many pieces they ordered, how many pieces have been shipped so far, stuff like that, which die it was when they ordered it, when it's expected to come in, and all of that. And you can choose which columns you want to see. So if you don't want them to see exactly how much has been shipped, if you only want them to see the order number, the item number, and when they requested it shipped, you can restrict to just showing that. It is up to you how much data you want to include and which columns you want to include. There's also another tab that will let you choose reports. And this is very similar to eResponse, where you set up reports that you want to have generated. And then they click the tab, they click download or email, and it will either send the file to be downloaded, or it will just directly send an email to the email account associated with their login with that report. And this will work like eResponse. It will allow them to do this at any time, to have the report generated with information that is up to date, and just generally makes it easier for your customers to get the information about their orders without needing to call one of your customer service people and ask for an update. And that potentially saves you a lot of time and a lot of unnecessary phone calls. Then the other feature, and so the EPICS Web Order Status works right now. We currently have a couple of users that have it in beta testing. I'll talk more about how you can join the beta later, but this is functional. It has been released and it is working for at least, I believe we have two customers or two companies that are using it for their customers and have had great success with it so far. The other feature is for outside processors, and this is something that is almost ready, but we do not quite have it in beta testing yet. So the way this will work is that you'll create logins for your outside processors. Then your outside processors can update the status of items as they receive them, and then as they work on them, and then as they send them back. And so you can then get more granular details about what the status of orders outside processors is. And you can do all of this. The web app itself is where the outside processors will do this. They will not need to use EPICS. They will instead use this web platform. But within EPICS, you'll be able to see what they've done, so that within the plant itself, you won't need to have a separate web login to see what changes were made and what order status is and what the status of the orders is. You just need to pull up the screen in EPICS, and it will show you what has been done so far and whether and what the status of the items is. Of course, one of the challenges with this that you will have to work with your outside processors is you will need to train them on how to use this. You will need to send them information. We've done our best to make it as straightforward as possible. Another concern that was that we kept in mind while designing this is if they don't use this, if you have an outside processor that either doesn't want to or said they were going to and then forgets, you can keep using EPICS as normal, exactly as it is now, where you just say, we sent it to outside processor, we received from outside processor, and all of that will still work. This is purely extra information you can get. It does not break the existing flow. And if this step does not occur for whatever reason, you aren't stuck waiting on an outside processor step to happen that just isn't. You can either mix and match within the same outside processor, with some of it getting handled there, some of it not. Or if you have outside processors that entirely handle it out there, but other outside processors you don't want to, and you don't even want to set up accounts for them, that also works. So just trying to make it as flexible as possible, make it all about giving you additional information, additional options, without ever putting you in a position where, because you have this set up, now things aren't working properly. So if either of these things sound like something that would be helpful to you, either the order status or the outside processor, EPICS Web is currently in closed beta, but if you're interested, you can email FOIA Inc. and request access, and we can see about getting you set up. Like I said, the order status is currently fully functional. If you're interested in beta testing that, we can get you set up on that very quickly. Within a week or two, we could get you the instructions so you can get set up on the beta for that. The outside processor is coming soon. I do not have an exact date on that, aside from hopefully within a month or two. But I don't have, but if you're interested in that, an outside processor, but not order status, still let us know, so that when outside processor is available, we can contact you and let you know that it's ready to test.